And so, although the only way the state increases our funding is through growth, our primary concern at the moment is increasing completion. There is no board goal to grow. And I would caution against a board goal of growing because our primary concern is increasing completion and shortening time to degree. So, having said all that, the ways that we seek revenue to fund that are right now through either categoricals that are being created to fund that completion increase, grants and foundation awards that are out there that we're competing for on a regular basis. Money that's within the state of California or within the federal government through the First in the World grant initiative, we are applying to those, as well as Title V funds. So we are applying to just about every funding source, as long as those funding sources support the goals of the organization. So seeking revenue just for the sake of seeking revenue doesn't support student success. It has to support the programs that we have in place. With regard to local revenue, the question for the board is how much time and energy do you put in to generate marginal revenue? We can generate another $300,000 of the stadium. It may displace athletics. It may cause us to spend another $100,000 in staff time for a net profit of, what would be considered marginal revenue compared to the budget. So, I mean, we can certainly look at other plans, and we have been in discussions with developers and contractors to look at our property to see if we can develop the rest of our property and look for revenue-generating opportunities like many other districts and universities do. But the only other source of revenue is to work with our foundation to raise money for programs and for scholarships. That is the way universities do it. And that is really the only other area that we can increase. And I know I don't want to speak for our executive director of the foundation, but we are looking at implementing a new strategic plan with a focus on increasing revenue within the foundation.
Is that something that, as far as the revenue goes, can be applied to programs? Perhaps we can restore some programs. I mean, our certificate programs are down by 71%. And, it would be nice if that's something that we can augment. Is that allowed through the foundation or through, it's not necessarily scholarships, but that's a kind of, for the unrestricted general fund and for our operational needs, what are some of the things that we can do to increase our effectiveness and make sure that we're not we have a contingency plan beyond just being at peril with the state funding, which I understand and have sympathy for.
So there's about 3 or 4 questions in that question. With regard to the foundation, I will let Trustee Baxter weigh in as well. There's nothing that prevents us from raising money from programs. Now, the money raised for any program would have to be consistent with the educational master plan of the college. So if we discontinue program, the college has no intention of bringing back a discontinued program. The college has intention of creating new programs that align with the workforce needs. And certainly, if there was a donor out there who wanted to endow a particular program, we would be more than happy to accept that money. I don't know, Trustee Baxter, if you have anything to add to that.
But it's just, most people want to give their money for scholarships. I always, when I meet with donors, I give them the option of what are your interests, what do you want to see, what do you want to do? And, so we would have to come up with some ideas that fit into the college's goals and try to find a donor. But right now, probably 85% of our money is restricted for scholarships because that's generally what we've done. That's generally what people have wanted to do.
So the other question in there is, in order to fund a program, you have to have ongoing predictable funding. We couldn't launch a program based on a couple of years of funding not knowing if we could continue that program because that wouldn't be fair to the students that we enroll in the program. So there has got to be a clear indication that there is or will be a funding source to fund the program going forward. With regard to career technical education, the governor in his budget has invested and is investing more money in career technical education, and currently there is a task force which coincidentally Lynn Shar, former, I guess still current CCA president, is a part of, and the goal of that work group is to look at ways to improve how CTE programs are funded so that the state can expand the number and types of CTE programs. So there are a number of efforts going on both at the state level and the local level. We are always exploring legislative remedies that would allow us to generate more revenue. Unfortunately, we've been restricted, whether it be outsourcing services, we're restricted from doing that, whether it be, again, charging additional fees like the CSU or the UC does per student to fund some of the programs that go into, for example, the CSUs charge a student success fee. And that revenue goes directly into supporting students. So we are barred from doing all of that. We can certainly look at legislative changes. That's always something I'm happy to do, but any one of those would be an uphill climb in this environment.
Or perhaps building and strengthening our relationships with business and industry and employers, which I'm sure we're working on, but that may be a way that we may want to explore maximizing our revenue or attempting to.
Absolutely. In most of those relationships, as you're aware, Trustee Zia, the mayor has launched Internship Challenge, specifically looking at employers to hire students with regard to relationships with employers that have them fund particular workforce needs. We are always looking at those potentials, but those are typically contract education opportunities, so we can't open up those courses to the general public. Those are specific contracts with a specific employer, and we're always trying to maximize that revenue. But again, there are so many restrictions, and again, this is not an excuse, because believe me, if there's a way that we can generate more revenue, we will continue to pursue it. But again, at this point, I don't think the campus environment, the campus culture is interested in getting into arrangements with specific employers that allow them special access to the college or allow them to advertise at the college. We've had those discussions in the past. The college has not wanted to enter into those agreements.
That's not what I'm advocating, by the way. That's not
I'm
what
using that
saying.
as a myriad of examples that we've looked into.
I'm going to recognize Trustee Baxter, then I have a question for
President Oakley, just so I
President
can elaborate on this, one of the challenges of working with businesses is they want specifically what they want, not necessarily what we want. And so they will put a number of strings attached to that. Most foundations, when they give you grants, they expect you to institutionalize that grant. Then that means it comes back to us to fund it. So you have to be very careful when you're looking for money that it doesn't end up costing you in the end. And so I just wanted to give that caveat.
Vice President Gable. This is ironically, it's a tentative budget. And as people have probably, if they've watched how community colleges, and we're part of that system, obviously, how we do our budgeting, we've gone through, I know at the beginning of the year you came up with a budget, and then we reached sort of an adjustment where we were watching what was taking place in the state legislature. The state legislature now has passed a budget, it's before the governor. That is probably going to be passed, but in the past, we've had some other things thrown into our process as we go through this, where we don't have an option to wait. Let's wait to see what the state legislature will do. In the past, there was a question with a November ballot initiative, Prop 30, yet here we are in June going through this process, and how can you wait? Well, what we did in that way, for anyone if they're interested, we actually were running two budgets to add to the enjoyment of this, and one if it passed, one if it didn't pass. So my question is, we're going through and this is more just a prediction, because I have to say, I appreciate the detail and the thoroughness that you have on these budgets. You're probably one of the best VPs is understanding budgets in the state of California, and by evidence tonight, knowing all of these items. Your guess, though, when we finally have the budget passed by the governor, is there, in your mind, are we seeing much change from what's been going past the state legislature? Are we going to get another curve in this one, or do we think that this time the governor, who could shift funding from one educational component to another, he can do lots of things, but best guess, is this fairly close to what we're going to see in our final budget here in the near future?
You know, I think this is the best budget that we have seen in many years, and this is a close approximation of what I think we will see with the final budget. You know, I tried to point out the areas that were not included in this budget that you'll see, you know, such as I think there's going to be about another $4 million in one-time mandate money. We will budget the scheduled maintenance, deferred, and instructional equipment money. We will better budget the SSSP and student equity money, you know, when we get a better estimation on some of the grant side. As far as ongoing revenues, and when I say ongoing revenues, that's primarily our apportionment revenue, there is not going to be much change in that area. We will be budgeting for the full-time faculty obligation. Although that is ongoing revenue, there's strings attached, just by the fact that we are going to have to increase the number of full-time faculty that we have, and we are going to have to hire full-time faculty. Now, they will give us 1 year to do that hiring. They're not going to require that we hire them in the 15-16 year, but we will have to have them hired and in place for fall of 16. So that will be, you know, about $1 million of ongoing revenue that you don't see here. But this is a very close approximation, besides those two items that I mentioned of what you'll see in the adopted budget. And it's probably the best budget that we will see in years to come. You know, I think 16-17 could still be somewhat of a good year, but I really think this is going to be the best budget that we'll see in a while.
It's the best budget I've seen in the short term, for sure. Superintendent President Oakley, because just a short answer on, because people have said it and you started to touch on it, and I know most of the board members are very comfortable with this, but the comment about, and probably from the general public, well, if we just just grow. And that means a lot of things to a lot of people. It means your classrooms are impacted. So if I turn to you and someone at the general public, which is not a bad question, but if you've heard the terms FTES, full-time equivalently students, FTEF, full-time equivalently faculty, the funding mechanism that goes into all this. So if somebody generally caught you on the street and said, we just need to grow, and all our budget issues would go away. Now, you touched on it a little bit, but it is such a complex funding mechanism. And people in the audience who would turn to me and say, you should run it like a business. I've been in the private sector my entire life. I have written, you know, I had my name on both sides of those checks. And it is not, and never will be, a formula that you would see in the private sector for lots of reasons, good, bad, and indifferent. So the simple answer, because I know people say that, let's just grow.
Well, the simple answer, unfortunately, is never a simple answer, but I've been asked this question repeatedly over the years, and I've testified many times on this question, and it behooves the state and behooves this college to set aside more money to support students per student funding than to dilute the per student funding by growing more. Every college in LA County is trying to grow. There are only so many students, and it leads to behaviors that undermine student success over the long term. So if we really care about student success, that will be the focus. We will certainly grow where it makes sense. You know, as long as I'm in this seat, we're not going to grow just for the sake of growing. It's got to make sense for the students. You know, we can go fill seats from anybody sitting at the park on any given day, but those students aren't going to help us achieve our goals. So, I mean, you know, we can also increase revenue by increasing increasing efficiency. If you want us to go back and negotiate with Janae next year to increase the number of students that they teach, we can do it that way. But I don't think that supports student success either. So that will not be a recommendation from me. But we have to look at this not just in terms of dollars, but in terms of what we want to accomplish. And this is why we need to be cautious on how fast we grow. Because 3 years from now, 4 years from now, you're going to be having a very different discussion. We've been through this cycle, I've been through this cycle 3 times already. We will be coming to you telling you your budget deficit is growing to the point where we have to think about layoffs. And I have cautioned everybody that I do not want to be in that conversation again. So we have to be careful in how we grow.
Yeah, well, thank you. And adding to that, the challenge we have of people being successful, certificate completions, timing, instead of taking 7 years, bringing it down to 2 to 3 years. So I appreciate it. I just know that question always comes up from the public. Chair recognizes Trustee Archuleta.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Vice President Gable, for that very excellent, comprehensive presentation. Just a question regarding, the budget, and I know you indicated in terms of, the categoricals, the uncertainty that, and I know from personal experience, we generally don't get a budget till fall, October. So the practice, and this is why you've prepared for us an adopted budget and then the actual budget and then the proposed budget for 15-16, is the practice from the state is that it allows us to project the budget right at 95%. So this is, many of your figures are based on, of course, the previous expenditures and costs, and that's how you've adopted the budget, right? Or
Correct.
prepared the budget.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think sometimes it's important maybe for the public to understand that, and I think might answer some questions in terms of how we go about basing our budgets, most of them which come from regs that are provided by the state, so that it helps us to set those budgets, since the actual dollars that come to us don't come to us so late in the fall. And then that's when you can actually build, and again, you provide us with the adopted budget. Is that correct?
Correct. The adopted budget will come to the board at the first meeting in September. The tentative budget is required by Education Code, and really what it does is it allows us to start spending money on July 1. If the board didn't adopt a tentative budget, then we couldn't spend anything starting July 1. So.
Yeah, and I would agree with Superintendent Oakley. Thank you, Superintendent Oakley. I just want to call him Superintendent Oakley, don't want to be disrespectful. That, there are some challenges, some inherent challenges within, the state budget and the way that the state budgets are set up. And I think that one of the, in looking at the budget and looking at the cost, looking the fact that we're at the 80s and, and I always, we have to be cautious that we don't reach that 90%, because once our budget is based on 90% salaries and we only have that 10% for discretionary and for any emergencies, we become a district that is at the risk of being in fiscal danger. So I want to caution us about remaining conservative. And again, because we know already that the economists are already predicting that there's going to be a dip in the next, and you're right that this year may be the best year, maybe one more in 18, 19, they're already talking about that dip. So we have to be very cautious, and if we learned anything from this last fiscal crisis, is that we have to be conservative in our spending, and the commitment has to be to our students, because the bottom line is that if the students aren't here, if the students don't stay enrolled, there is no institution. So that's important. But thank you for that excellent presentation.
Thank
In your comment about the 90%, I know we talk about that, maybe people in the public don't realize that terminology, but the example is City College of San Francisco, where their expenditures for salary, benefits, et cetera, have exceeded 90%. There, I believe, last time was at 91, 92, 93% of their entire budget is allocated towards their budget for employment costs, benefits. And they are also the largest community college in our system in California, and they're also the one that's on the brink of, I don't know how they can do it, but being closed down through accreditation. Accreditation, essentially, because of that one issue, they let their costs run away. And so that's the number we always see in our budget. I know we referred to. And it's a number I know I bring up a lot as well. So, I'm sorry, other questions, members of the board, at this time?
I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure, because when I looked at this budget, and I agree with all your comments, that absolutely our students are first and foremost, they're our clientele. When I did a little bit of a back of the napkin calculation, I noticed that it was 59% comes from the state. Maybe it was just for unrestricted. Maybe it's because I'm obsessed with that operating fund. Is that correct? Or I mean, where does this when you say 90% allocation, is that for the entire for restricted and unrestricted? Because the numbers quite didn't pan out to 90% when I did my calculations. It was about 59% for state apportionment.
When we're referring to the percentage of state revenue funding operations, we're referring to the general fund. The restricted general fund has sources coming from many, many different areas, because those are mostly either grant, federal dollars. But I'll turn it over to Anne Marie, see if she's got a more precise number for the unrestricted general fund.
Right, so from apportionment, which is generated based upon our full-time equivalent students, we're budgeting $107.4 million coming in through apportionment out of a total of $121.3 million. So that's 88.5% of our funding is being generated by the FTES that we serve, or the number of students that we serve. Now, the apportionment is broken into 4 different categories or sources of revenue of what makes up that total apportionment. A piece of that is the state general apportionment. There's the education protection account, that's the $15.8 million that we approved earlier. There's the local property taxes that we collect, and then there's the enrollment fees that we collect from the students. But
So just to be clear, the state portion is what I rounded up to 59, 60%. So when we say 90%, you're talking about not just the state, the entire allocation.
Well, the number is 88%.
right.
Percent.
Our number, yes.
This, if you wanted just the state portion, how much is coming from state revenue alone, that's 72%. So of the 88%, 72% is coming directly from the state, and the remaining 16% is coming from our local property taxes and enrollment fees.
Other questions? Any?
I just need to clarify one thing Anne Marie said, just to be clear, because it can be taken 3 different ways. The state collects revenue. The state collects local property tax. The state collects enrollment fees and then gives it back to us. So,
Well, they don't give it all back to us, but
Not at 100% though.
a portion of it.
in a post-Prop 13 environment, we get the scraps.
All right, there's no other questions at this time, because this action, I will read, is in accordance with the California Code of Regulations and a directive from the Chancellor's Office, which states that on or before the first day of July, the governing board of each community college district shall develop and adopt a tentative budget. There is a motion and a second on the floor, and again, Anne Marie, to you and your staff, outstanding job as always regarding this very difficult to explain budgets, especially for higher education, but outstanding job.
Thank you.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no other questions at this time, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on item 8.2, tentative budget.
Irma Archuleta.
Aye.
Virginia Baxter.
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg.
Aye.
Doug Otto.
Aye.
And Sunny Zia.
Aye.
8.2 carries. We're now to the next two items. These are resolutions. 8.3 is, and perhaps I'll ask for a motion, and then if you can at least explain why we're doing temporary interfund cash borrowing, which is always interesting following our budget. But so could I entertain a motion on 8.3 to adopt this resolution? A motion by Trustee Otto,
Second.
second by Trustee Baxter. Quick question. Why are we borrowing money?
We're really not planning on borrowing money. We're just doing this in case we do have to borrow money. That'll be the same for the next resolution as well, regarding potentially borrowing money from the Los Angeles County Treasurer. So although we don't plan on having to borrow either from ourselves or the county treasurer, these resolutions need to be adopted before June 30th in order to allow us to, if the need were happen to arise. If something happens and the state
You
stops
never know
paying us
what
our
could
cash.
happen in the state. There could be some major catastrophe in the state, or for some reason, cash flow stops from the state. It would allow us to continue to keep paying our employees.
Or in the past, they didn't pass a budget and they left it off to us, or they didn't send us the money that we were expecting. So I just always think it's important to clarify. So there is a motion, a second on the floor. Chair
Second.
recognizes Vice President Otto.
And one of my epiphanies when I got on this board was that at that time, the Long Beach Community College District was getting about a third or 30% of the money that the state allocated the next year from the year that it was said to be available. And that's just because they did these deferrals. And as I would go through these budgets and worry about what was going on, people would put their arm around me and say, listen, it doesn't really matter because the money's not coming in anyway, and it's going to be next year before we get a lot of it, and therefore you have to have these abilities to borrow if that's your situation, because you got to pay your bills. And so I've watched this. I mean, it's the state of the funding of community colleges. It ebbs and flows in terms of when we get the money, but as a rule, it doesn't come when we expect it or when it's allocated. It sometimes comes a lot later. So it's another reason why we have to pass these resolutions.
The motion is second on the floor. Are there members at this time?
Yes, is
As is Trustee Zia.
is there a cost that we have to incur on a monthly basis, or what's the impact, financial impact?
I think only if we borrow.
Well, wasn't this for borrowing?
On this particular item for 8.3, we would be borrowing from ourselves. So meaning
Okay.
we would be able to borrow cash from our other funds and move it into the unrestricted general fund as needed. So there is no cost whatsoever of doing that.
So it's, when you say Los Angeles County Treasurer, it's our account with them.
Well, that's item 8.4.
That's the next motion.
Oh, 8.3.
Next motion.
But to answer the question for 8.4,
Yeah,
since we're there, the only cost would be lost interest earnings. So there's no true cost that we would have to pay out. We just wouldn't earn interest on the cash that we borrowed from the county.
All right, there's no other questions on 8.3. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Irma Archuleta?
Aye.
Virginia Baxter?
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg?
Aye.
Doug Otto?
Aye.
Sunny Zia?
Aye.
8.3 carries. 8.4 is a resolution again. This is for cash flow. And again, this is a borrowing issue that we would have from the Los Angeles County Treasurer. And I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Archuleta, second by Trustee Otto. Motion and a second is on the floor. Questions, comments on this item?
I'm sorry, what was the cost again for this? For this line item? Financial impact, it's just...
There wouldn't
touched on.
really be a true cost. It would just be, we wouldn't earn any interest earnings on the cash that we borrowed from the county.
So it would be lost revenue, essentially, right? Because the interest is that is earned
Well,
as revenue.
We wouldn't have the revenue because we didn't have the cash to earn the revenue, so we would have to be borrowing the cash.
Okay.
I know we'd be borrowing money because we didn't get our funding from the state, and we're penalized double for having to do what we need to do. There is a motion, a second on the floor. No other comments, members of the board at this time. Madam Secretary, can you please call the roll on
Irma
8.4?
Archuleta?
Aye.
Virginia Baxter?
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg,
Aye.
Doug Otto,
Aye.
and Sunny Zia.
Aye.
8.4 carries. 8.5, resolution agreement with the California Department of Education for child care.
So moved.
Motion by Vice President Otto,
Second.
second by Trustee Baxter. Question, comments on this item?